And I would say that the subject that you're the weakest, you might need to do a bit more research on your own. Sometimes I tell people Google is your best friend. There's lots of things you'll find on Google. Things like Wikipedia. Almost everything we talk in this classroom, you'll find very good entries within Wikipedia as well. So you might need to supplement a bit the domain that you're the weakest. Because we cover everything, all the key topics, but can you retain everything? That's the big question. The brain is a sponge, but by the end of the week, the sponge is getting a bit full, and sometimes it doesn't sink in as good. And one thing we do within the classroom, and that's why we build the class this way, is going over key topics multiple times. So I'm going to talk about some of the key topics on the slide. Then you get into your exam booklet, and you have those summary topics, which are like bullet points of key things you should know. And you read them, and it's like, asymmetric crypto is faster than asymmetric crypto. What do you mean? Why is it faster? And it should click in your brain, why is it faster and what do you mean as well. If you read the bullet and it doesn't click, you might need to review and find out what do they mean by this bullet. That's the second time you get exposed to the key topics. Then you get into your practice quiz at the end of the module, which will probe you on key topics again for a third time. And after 3 times, if it doesn't sink in, but never sink in. So usually by going over a few times, that will help you remember the information. And that's what we're trying to do in class. And on the final day, you go over all of the key points, those 289 questions, that will really do a nice summary and find out what do I need to study from that point on to get ready for my exam. So is it enough by itself? Most likely. You're going to have to and get a bit for the domain that you have difficult. Any other questions? No questions? Let's move into domain 1. We'll talk about security principles and concepts, risk management, risk analysis, policy supporting practice. We'll talk about policies, what they are, guidelines, what they are, procedure, what they are, and your own corporate standards that you would develop as well. We'll talk about data classification. Something that people working within government-type entities, you do this on a day-to-day basis. Like myself, when I work within DOD, I knew exactly if I was writing a report, I knew what classification to put on the report. And this was like second nature for me because I was doing this every single day. But within private companies, people are not used to data classification. And for them it's like very blurry. How do we do it? What it is based on, what are the key roles that have to be played within data classification, and some of the issues related to data classification as well. We'll talk about role and responsibilities on the security side, and a few slides on security awareness training, which is something growing today. If I go back 6 years ago, nobody was doing security awareness training. We all took for granted that people knew what to do. If you don't tell people what they're allowed to do and what they're not allowed to do, how can you expect them to know? So today, security awareness, especially in the States, there's lots of departments that it's mandatory that you must do security awareness at regular intervals. And I think you should do it within your company as well. Maybe once a year, you take half a day. You make it kind of a relaxed day, fun day, and people learn about security, what they should not do, and some of the rules that they have to follow within the company as well. It could be something as simple as password protection. Stupid things like writing the password down, keeping a small note in the drawer. People do this because we're not very good at remembering complex passwords, and we put it down on paper. But not so good on the security side when we do it. So things like this could help quite a bit. We'll talk about security awareness training as well. So first portion, InfoSec concept and objectives. We'll talk about asset management, risk management, different steps that are involved within risk management. We'll talk about policy, standard, procedure, guidelines, what is the difference between each of them. And we'll talk a bit about knowledge transfer and different types of knowledge transfer that exist out there. So the first one is the 3 tenets on which security sits: confidentiality, integrity, and In this case, we have CIA. Some other books will refer to it as KIC, so that you don't confuse this with the three-letter organization in the States. So, if we look at each of the concepts, the first one, confidentiality, is simply the property that would ensure that only the people that need to access the information would have access to the information. It would be to ensure that the information is protected either in transit over a network or in storage as well. And you're trying to keep the secret, and only people that should access those secrets can access those secrets. MQTT, simply making sure that you would be able to detect modification of the data, either in transit or in storage, and making sure that the data was not damaged or modified over time as well. Availability, simply being able to access the data where and when we need it. And sometimes in class people say, come on, this is all very nice, but how much of each do I need? That depends on your business. If we look, for example, at the Department of Defense, in their case, they might be very concerned about confidentiality. They want to keep secret. However, if I am eBay or Amazon.com or a very large e-commerce website on the internet, in that case, I would be very concerned about integrity of the information. If I buy something on eBay and it's $5.99, I don't want to pay $69.99. I want to make sure that the transaction was not damaged and that the data was not damaged as well. The same, availability. If I have an online e-commerce website and I'm making $100,000 per minute, if I'm down for 1 hour, it means that I am losing millions of dollars. So in this case, availability would be my big concern. And I would focus on having like redundancy mechanism, multiple connection on the internet, multiple power supply within the system, to make sure that I would have no interruption whatsoever. So the three together, you have to adapt it to your company, depending on what you're trying to protect and what is the goal that you're trying to achieve within your company. And through those mechanisms, you would have what they call as well non-repudiation that could be in place, which they put with this slide. And non-repudiation is simply that you cannot proclaim you did not do a transaction if the transaction was signed with your digital signature. So it would prove without a doubt that you sent the message, you did the transaction, or you did whatever action that was signed with your digital signature. And that could be achieved through those mechanisms as well. So always remember that you have to adapt this to your own company. There's no set recipe as far as you should have 30% of this, 30% of this, and 30% of this. Changing in phases. This slide can show that things have changed over time. We used to have a already, we used to have a very, very centralized approach. If you go back maybe like 15 years ago, most people were using mainframe. And the mainframe computer had a series of dumb terminals attached to it. And those dumb terminals usually were attached with serial lines. So it was easy to control dissemination of the information. To get access to the data, you needed access to the building, you needed access to the data center, and you needed access to a dumb terminal. Now, first